Good evening. I'm going to call the school committee meeting from January 27th to order. Quickly walking through the agenda and noting a few order changes that we'll go through just so everybody's on the same page. The agenda calls for public comment as normal, consent agenda, reports. In the new business area, we'll have a Turf 1 project overview from our partners at Activitas who are here today to walk us through that. We'll talk briefly as a committee about the Cafeteria Workers Joint Labor Management Committee. We also have the FY23 budget discussion and final vote, if there is any further discussion, and the FY23 school calendar review and vote. In terms of order, we're making a few small changes to that. We're going to take the student report first, so that Samantha can leave if she needs to go study for tests and things like that. And then we'll take the Activitas Project 1 turf update after that, and then we'll commence with the normal order of the agenda. So with that said, Sean, can you get a motion, please?
Move to take out of order the student report.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Chuck. All in favor? And we passed 6-0. Just a quick note for those in the room and watching, we do have a few people remotely, or at least one person remotely participating, and at due time when he's ready, he'll let us know why and all that kind of fun stuff. So with that said, Samantha, off to you.
Good. First of all, I want to announce and congratulate the boys swim team who are going to states. We're all very happy for you and rooting for you guys. And second of all, one of our very own RMHS students made it to All Nationals Honors Choir. And just for insight or perspective, this is a choir with 240 students chosen out of the entire country who go through rigorous auditions, qualifying from districts to states and finally nationals, and that is the junior Liam Sennett. And it was just over the weekend, and he worked with globally recognized conductors and composers, and we are so very proud of him. Lastly, the students were updated today by Mr. Tracy that a secure network can be created for students during the school day. And while we are still not allowed to use personal laptops, it makes a huge difference that other devices, including phones, can be utilized during the school day and for after-school activities. I want to first highlight something Mr. Tracy said in his email, which was that it was student voice, agency, and advocacy that led to the addition of the new secure network. And I want to openly thank Principal Tracy for saying that. First of all, I think it gives the student body confidence that we didn't really think that we'd actually be heard and can make changes in our community by advocating for ourselves, which is something I think we really need to hear and understand. While of course it wasn't the exact solution that we wanted, a middle ground was created, and we are all incredibly grateful and appreciative to administration and the IT teams. So on behalf of all the students, I want to thank you for hearing us and our concerns and making us feel as though our voices and efforts could do something and change things. So thank you.
Great job. I think we need to find a way to get Liam here to congratulate him in person as well. So,
Absolutely.
we'll get the Senate family to join us at some point in time in the future. Before we go any further, I know we have quorum here, so Mr. Ross, would you like to call Finance Committee to order?
To call the Finance Committee to order.
Great. Thank you and welcome again for those of you that are here. Okay, Samantha, thank you. Stay as long as you want.
Thank you.
Leave whenever you're ready. We'd love to have you stay or leave. Well, we'd love to have you stay, but we know you need to leave.
Thank you. Have a nice night.
Have a good night. Thank you, Samantha.
And once she does that, Sarah, pull the mics over so you have the mics in front of you as well. Okay, so we are going to do another minor adjustment to the order of the evening, and so Sean?
I move to take out of order item E1, Turf 1 project overview.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Carla's hand. And all in favor? And it passes 6-0. Okay, so gentlemen, if you would mind, please, up to the lectern. I think you have the clicker too. So welcome, and we're looking forward to your presentation.
Good evening. My name's Steve Crisafulli. I'm a landscape architect with Activitas. Mark Novak, principal, is also here. We've worked with the town for a few years now, completing Turf 1 or 2 a couple years ago. So quick overview of Turf 1 in the stadium. The field is about 15 years old. Useful life of a turf field is about 10 to 12. So it's time. The track is seeing some wear. So just brief schedule. We're planning to get the bid documents out in a couple weeks on the 10th. with construction slated to start mid-April and hopefully wrapping up mid-August to end of August. This was funded by the Article 13, $3 million. Our preliminary opinion of probable construction costs is right around there, considering costs have gone up for everything. So we're pretty confident that we're fitting everything in, including the light renovation, retrofitting them to LEDs. So as part of that $3 million budget, it's new track, new turf field, all new equipment, new scoreboard, landscape and circulation improvements, and then the retrofit of the lights. And that is the proposed. Colors aren't set in stone. I think that's
That's it? Okay.
brief.
Committee, any questions? Carla?
Thanks for the presentation. Is the bid process, is it a low bid? For who? Do we?
Believe that's how the town, is
Anybody
that
know?
correct? It's low bid, not best interest.
Yeah, it's public bid. It'll be Chapter 30, 39M. So it's lowest qualified bidder. So all of our specifications are experience and qualification-based specifications. So they don't meet those experience and qualifications, then we have the right to reject them.
Sure.
So that kind of gives you the best of both worlds to ensure that you'll have a qualified contractor performing the work.
Can I ask another? And in terms of the stadium, the stadium is staying, the
The
bleachers and stuff are staying. Perfect, thank you.
Aaron, did you have a question?
Yeah, what about the fencing? Does that remain
Pretty much all new fencing.
all new fencing?
Yeah.
Okay. And then I had another question, is that okay?
Yeah.
What is the plan, maybe it's for Mr. Zaya, what is the plan for spring track and any teams that would normally use the field, maybe lacrosse, soccer, I'm not sure who uses the field?
Yep, so what I have done, I've contacted some local districts to see if we can use their facilities when we need to do that. So I have a pretty good commitment with Austin Prep right now. I have talked with some other communities. It depends sort of what we need and when we need it.
Okay.
But there are those talks in place.
Great, thank you.
And it would affect track. It may affect lacrosse, boys and girls, a little bit come tournament time or postseason play.
Okay.
Chuck and then Sarah?
So with the $3 million bid, what's the pool for market for companies that do this? I'm hoping it's a lot just because of that number's going to be tight with all the things, the supply chain and goods and everything that's happening right now, and inflation and.
Yeah. It's a fantastic question. So, to be perfectly honest with you, contractors are extremely busy right now, so that's why there's a concerted effort to get these drawings on the street out to bidders as soon as we possibly can, to try to get the most competition in terms of bid pricing from these athletic field contractors. In addition to that, we've also been in touch with a number of the contractors. So, for example, David Quirk, Quirk Construction Corporation, who did the Turf 2 project. We've been in touch with him. They know it's coming out. We've been in touch with a number of the other contractors that we typically do work with here in the greater Boston area. Some of those contractors, David White and Sons, RAD Sports, Argus Construction Corporation, they're all very, very well versed in this type of construction. The biggest thing for me is the track contractor, the track subcontractor. So Cape and Island Tennis and Track, they're also aware that this project is coming out. We want to get on their books and on their schedule as soon as possible to ensure that once the existing track is removed, The existing pavement is pulverized. The new pavement goes down. Once that pavement cures, we want to make sure that Cape and Island is ready to mobilize. I think the rest of the products on site, generally, we're in pretty good shape, bidding this out in the middle of February, early February. The other lead time issue that might pose a problem, depending on who wins the low bid, who is the lowest qualified bidder. If they go with one or two turf companies, we're hearing that some turf companies aren't having long lead times on their products, while others are. Some have been significantly affected by the storm that happened last winter down in Texas, the big ice storm, because there's a bunch of polymer factories down in that general part of the country. And the polymers that go into the development of the synthetic turf fibers were affected. Some of the turf companies that are eligible to bid on this project are vertically integrated, so they weren't affected by that, but others were. But we're pretty confident that the schedule will be able to hit.
Can I just, so under the guidelines of lowest responsible or lowest qualified bid, wouldn't that mean that they have to be able to meet the schedule?
Yes, yep. Right now, we don't have liquidated damages as part of the contract. In my experience, that's kind of a double-edged sword. The minute you put liquidated damages as part of the contract, if they don't deliver on time, they also want to see incentive if they finish sooner than the contract time. And then I start to worry about, are they actually delivering a quality product, or are they just focusing on getting a few extra bucks at the end of the project? Secondly, with liquidated damages, they're also going to escalate their price so they assume less of a risk.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sarah?
I was just going to ask, I'm not sure if you can answer this, Tom, or maybe administration, if we've started thinking ahead about implications for graduation and alternate spaces for that. And second part, if we've notified other organizations who use it in the summer, like Reading Rec or others as well.
Do you have an answer?
Yes, I'd be happy to answer that. We have begun brainstorming with Mr. Tracy, the principal of Reading Memorial High School, to explore other options. We've spoken to Joe Huggins, our director of facilities, to explore different options owned by the town as well as privately owned within the area. So we're exploring different options, and we'll soon be able to report back.
Great, thank you.
John?
Yeah, just, do we expect any portion of this project to have any major implications in any of the surrounding facilities or the parking or anything like that for any of the other fields and play areas?
So Imagination Station, much like Turf 2, will probably be a staging area for the project. Other than that, there shouldn't be any impact, maybe a temporary impact, a couple days or so when they're working in the drives immediately adjacent to the stadium. But other than that, everything should be relatively confined to the project site.
Thank you.
Thanks. So the whole issue with supply chain, which is probably in the forefront of everybody's minds, is that can that be used as a disqualifier for it probably can't be used as a disqualifier for a company that's competent, right? And is that part of the bid process of, evidence of their supply chain?
It's not necessarily part of the bid process, but if they're bidding on the project, they're also bidding on the schedule. We've given them a substantial and final completion date, so that's what they need to hit. By bidding it in February, the longest lead time item that I am currently aware of is synthetic turf. And again, that's only for a couple of companies. And that's 4 months from approval of shop drawings. So even with that, we have February, March, April, May. We got plenty of time.
Sure.
We should be fine.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just in terms of project managing this, will you all and Joe be project managing this, or will the company that ends up winning the bid be project managing this as we work it through?
So they'll have a project manager. The company that wins the bid will have a project manager, but we have been retained by the town to perform construction administration services. So we'll run weekly project meetings. We'll review the work. We'll do a site walk after every one of our project meetings. And then at various milestones throughout the project, we'll also be back on campus to inspect and review the construction progress. We also review all the submittals, so every single product that is brought onto site has to get approved by my office before it's ordered by the contractor. So much like Turf 2, it'll be a very, very similar process.
I was just going to ask, you guys did the same thing for Turf 2, right?
Yep.
And in terms of, and maybe this is for Mr. Zaya as well, in terms of contingencies, if you go back to the schedule here, it's substantially complete by August 15th, it's fully complete by August 31st or so. What if we don't hit those deliverables? What does that mean for the fall sports seasons? What does that mean for any other, do we have other contingency plans we've already started talking about? And what do those look like?
So right now, we do have our fall schedule sort of in place as a draft. So if we do need to move things, one thought that I had was if we had home games at the front part, moving them, flip-flopping. So if we were playing Arlington, for instance, home the first time and away the second, if we had to flip-flop those, that might be an option. Or again, reaching out to some of our local abutting communities to see if we can use some of their space as well. It's also not in our league, out of the question, if we had a home game scheduled, is playing it at the away venue, just to get that game in if we could.
Do we think we'll have enough practice facilities outside of the stadium if we need it over the summer, over that August period? Will we be able to use the Birch Meadow fields out here and stuff like that?
Yeah, so everything, the only thing that would be offline would be the stadium field, which is going to mess up our schedule a little bit. But with Parker being turf, that's a big help for us, as well as the open area grass space. So I think we're going to be okay. I think if it's a wet early fall, late spring, that may have an impact.
Okay, and just building on Sarah's question a little bit as well, in terms of communication with some of the other organizations. One of the challenges we've had in the past is making sure we're very openly communicating with, whether it's youth lacrosse, whether it's youth soccer, whatever it is, about what they can expect. Obviously, it may change if some of these things happen, but are you running point on that, Tom, in terms of communicating with?
Yeah, so typically for the youth organizations, I run through the recreation department, who are the ones that schedule the field during those times. So I talk with Jenna Fiorente. She disseminates that to the youth programs, and I talk to many of the youth liaisons throughout the year anyways, and so again, I'm open with them with what they need and want and what we need and want.
Okay, great, thank you. Ms. Downing?
Mary Ann Downing, 13 Heather Drive. I'm sure Mr. Zay is on top of this, but just make sure you include Joe Mulligan in the loop, because band camp starts like early to mid-August and uses that field. And if they can use other fields, they will, but it's kind of a key thing for 2 weeks. Thanks.
Yeah, Mr. Mulligan and I talk probably, if not daily, at least weekly, about the events that we have. I know they have a big event coming up in, I think, 2 weekends. Luckily, it's not this weekend. But yeah, I do let Joe know. Yep.
Okay, any further questions? Carla?
So Turf 2 is beautiful, and I'm looking forward to Turf 1 being as beautiful, so thank you.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Oh, wait, Mr. Ross?
Thanks, Ed Ross, Kensington Ave. Just a quick question, just on, you were talking about the construction costs in the bid process. And I know in just some of the presentations we had, probably going back last year, do we have a list of like adults in case it does come under that? Like, has that already been kind of fully vetted so we know, as that kind of shakes out and, and do we need, like, does that end up being kind of reprioritized as we kind of go through, or is that kind of just set in stone now and we know what to expect?
It's pretty set in stone. I think right now we might have one or two alternates, the big one being the lights.
Yep.
But we've been planning to get it all under that $3 million.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Actually, I didn't even ask. Anybody on the phone have any questions or comments?
I think that was
Thanks,
Tom
Dr.
Hawkins.
Milichewski.
Or Tom.
It was Tom.
Milichewski.
Thanks, Joe. All right, so, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Have a
Thank
wonderful
you.
evening.
Have a good day. Thank you.
All right, so now we return to our normal agenda, and we'll start with public comment. Is there anybody in attendance that would like to make public comment? And seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Do we have a motion?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Do we have a second? Seconded by Carla's hand. Any discussion? Anything anybody wants to pull out? Any adjustments? All right, seeing none. All in favor? All opposed? None. It passes 6-0. Okay, so we'll move on to reports. And Dr. Stice?
No reports tonight.
No reports. And Dr. Hardy's not here. Dr. Ms. Bhutan?
I have no reports this evening.
No report as well. Dr. Milichewski, do you have a report there?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, perfect. So I can hear Randall here, so we'll do my best. First, I apologize that I was earlier in the week, so I've been working remotely for the week, and I look forward to being back in the office next week. I'll just quickly provide an overview of something I'm considering running tomorrow, and that's about the protocol. So again, I'm just going to give a high level overview tonight, and then we'll go tomorrow. So what
Hey, Dr. Milichewski, can you hold on a second? We're going to see if we can pump your volume a little bit because we can barely hear you now. Is there anything we can do?
have a talk?
Tom, will you speak to us again?
I can. Is this any better?
It's slightly better.
If you can't hear me super well, I can hold off on the update as well.
Okay. Well, why don't we try one more time and we'll let you know if we need to push it to the next meeting.
Okay, then I'll give a really quick overview just because people, again, will see this in more detail tomorrow, but just so the community is aware, we'll be shifting our testing protocols to be in alignment with DESI and DPH's new recommended guidance, which includes keeping our symptomatic testing, keeping our pool testing, and instead of our test and stay program, providing our staff and our families with take-home kits to be used at their discretion. So the rationale behind this shift is that over the past several months, while test and stay has been integral to keeping our kids in school and keeping our schools open, we realized that,
This is why we need our remote software. Sorry, Tom, did you get that feedback too?
We lost.
I think we lost him. All right, the high-level summary is we're switching from test and stay to sending test kits home with our staff and students. Across the state, it was like 99% of all test and stays were negative, so DESE and DPH decided that it was a more appropriate recommendation to suggest, and we have adopted that suggestion to move to this different testing model. Is that about right?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct. That's right.
All right, so let's move on to liaison and subcommittee reports. Sean?
No report, thank you.
Chuck?
Yes, thank you. We met, our CASA, the coalition met last night, and it was a great meeting. Erica went over the teen mental health first aid course that they had, which I think she said 219 students did it. So it was just a really good good feedback from the students and just a very good response from the students. The other thing we went over was they're still trying to fill a vacancy for the public safety clinician. I think that was approved at town meeting, so they're just getting that job description out, and we'll start a search for that now. And the other thing that was discussed was we have the interface program in town where parents can access through the schools, or community members can access through police or other town hall services for anxiety, substance abuse, family matters, all kinds of things like that. And the importance of the discussion was that's way up, that the use of that. And to the extent that the company Interfaith has put it on a pause right now. So, and Erica just found that out, actually, probably yesterday or the day before. So they're trying to figure out what to do to be able to offer people and students services. So that, I guess we'll just stay tuned for that, but that was concerning to hear. The thing that when I came out of that meeting, I really realized, and Dr. Milichewski was there as well, I really realized how important this budget is, and the positions we're adding, the counselor positions and such, that it really, just from what I heard from that teen course and stuff, I mean, it just, it was a well-crafted budget by the administration, and it really is addressing a lot of what I heard, so thank you for that. So that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Chuck. Carla?
No report, thank you.
Aaron?
No report.
Sarah?
No report.
Okay, I don't have much to report other than, on the select board agenda for next Tuesday, they have put the ARPA subcommittee on that agenda. Seems like they're suggesting an advisory committee to the select board, but we'll see how that plays out next Tuesday, so we can then get some of those conversations going forward. Seeing Ed nodding, so hopefully I got that right. All right, so let's move on to the cafeteria workers related update. Susan, are you going to take this one?
Yes, I'd be happy to.
Great.
So in the agreement between the Reading Public Schools School Committee and the cafeteria employees, AFSCME Council 93, Local 1703, there was an agreement to create a joint labor management council in February in order to reevaluate our food service workers' salary schedule for FY23. The recommendation before you is to include 4 members on within the Reading group. That would include the Director of Human Resources, Michelle Roach, our Director of School Nutrition, Danielle Collins, myself as the Director of Finance and Operations, and a school committee member to engage in those conversations with the bargaining unit.
Okay. So from a discussion perspective, are there any particular school committee members that are interested in that? And before I take their feedback, is there a specific timeline at which this committee needs to complete its work?
That's right. The result is due, it reads by April 2022, so ideally by the end of April.
Okay.
So,
Mr. Robinson?
I don't know if, as the chair, that's something you would want to do, but I would certainly be very interested. I had a conversation, just an impromptu conversation when I was meeting with the superintendent earlier this week with Michelle, and it just really opened my eyes and she has a lot of experience in that area. I guess her father's a director in another community, and I just didn't realize how far behind we were, and that I'm glad that she's taken the lead and Susan has taken the lead to, I guess, reopen the contract is basically what we're talking about. So anyway, I'd be interested if that's not something that you're doing. So.
Okay. Any other interest?
I would be interested if Chuck fell through.
if Chuck fell through, okay, as a backup, huh? All right, so I think, given that it says by April, I'm perfectly, and Chuck's experience in all these negotiations, I'm perfectly happy to ask Chuck to serve on our behalf in that regard, and, you know, report back as necessary whenever we need to from an executive session perspective. So, Chuck, thank you for volunteering. I think we all have a lot on our plates, and I appreciate that you stepped up to take that one as well.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you so much.
All right, great. So moving right along, now we'll move on to the FY23 budget discussion and final vote. There's no particular presentation for this. We've been through it for the last 3 weeks or so. And I think we all know where we stand at the current time. But is there any further committee discussion on the topic? And then if not, is there any finance committee discussion on the topic? And we can then move forward. So looking around the table. Nothing further. I think we've said our piece. Finance Committee, is there anything else you would like to speak to or ask about? As a committee agreed to direct the administration on was that next year's tuition, FY23's tuition, $3,600.
Right, no, I remember that, but was that reflected in this budget under
It's Ed's.
I think we usually have it in there, but that's okay, you know.
As presented, but
I wonder if we're back yet. All set? Okay. So we are now back on RCTV. Apologies for the brief interruption. We had a little bit of a technical difficulty this time. That number, right?
Yep.
Okay, so as we were offline, there was a question about what does this mean for the budget in terms of the conversation from, last week and whatnot. So in particular, the full-day kindergarten discussion from last week. So just so everybody's on the same page, the budget as it is has not really, the bottom line of the budget has not changed. The amount of money coming out of the revolving account for full-day kindergarten in terms of what's in the budget has not changed. We're still putting the 1.1 million, that's part of that, in the budget. What has changed is that instead of the 3,000 from a tuition perspective for FY23, it's going to be 3,600 as the tuition for FY23. That will, essentially what that does is leave about 100,000, give or take, in the revolving account for FY24, give or take. We'll see what ends up happening as the year goes on and things along those lines. So we, as a committee, will be voting on the budget as it was, which is, the 51,783,363 number that aligns with Finance Committee recommendations, and that includes a reduction in the full-day kindergarten charge for the FY23 coming year. We still have work to do, right, for the forward years, FY24, 25, 26. This has not locked us into any of that. We have a guideline that we have never really had that we're going to try and work through with you all from a FinCom perspective, with the select board, with the town manager, to figure out those next steps as we work it through. So, Jean.
Thank you. Jean Borowski, Johnson Woods Drive. So I understand that for FY24 then, is there a plan for how to fund additional tuition reduction, or is there a scenario where the tuition will go back up in FY24?
I think the answer to that question is it depends.
Okay.
If you look at some of the other models we put forward, it's possible that we don't go back up, but we stay at 3,600.
Okay.
Right? And we still can somewhat sustain that. We still have to figure out how to ideally close the gap and ideally get to the point where we as a committee think we should be and where the administration thinks we should be. So as I said, there's a lot of work still to be done there. The goal would be that it steps down again in FY24 and then steps down again in FY25. We have to make sure that we can do that from a funding perspective as a town. We can't do it by ourselves, whether that's town meeting, whether that's the continued conversations in a spring financial forum this year, summer and fall financial forums, whatever the case may be, as we work it through collectively.
Maybe a different way to ask that question, is the $100,000 left in the revolving fund enough to sustain that reduction to 3,600 or no? Or would a different revenue source need to be identified?
The best approach to look at it, and I can pull it up real quick, is the direct cost model. In that model, we started it at 3,200, and then it was stepping up year by year, and it was sustainable at a relatively modest cost increase. So we're going to start a little higher than that and sustain even at that number potentially. Does it mean that we will, if I were to look at it and think of it off the top of my head, there's still something we have to close the gap on. It's not going to be 400,000. It's not going to be 670,000, which is where we started the conversation 2 weeks ago, right? So it'll be, maybe it's 200, maybe it's 100. We have to figure out what that number is. But it would be far more sustainable if we stayed at that level than if we dropped down. And so that's kind of the thing we'll have to work out as a collective over the next 6, 9, 12 months as we work forward towards the next year's budget.
May I ask a follow-up?
One more, let me check, wants to ask a question first, or make a point.
Yeah, so I think it's, and to Mary Ann's point as well, I think it would be very optimal to be passing this budget, knowing what the plan, with the plan that we're doing for next year and knowing what the plan is for the out years. But as Tom mentioned, this ARPA committee, I think that's a real important component to know what comes out of that. If we had done that earlier, maybe we would have had this solution, but I think that's why we're really not able to put together that solution until we actually know what we can or can't do with the ARPA funds and/or something else.
Just, I mean, that is one potential option, ARPA.
Right.
Whether or not it becomes that is to be determined. And Jane, as you and I know, we've talked about all sorts of different kinds of models.
Yeah.
What will work, we have to work it through, right?
I think my only request, and it's probably, usually the FinCom is able to submit questions before you present the budget to the FinCom. My suggestion would be, it would be really good to know what is the delta between, with $100,000 left in the revolving fund, what's the deficit? Is it 200,000? Is it 100? I think we need to know what delta we're building into FY24 and beyond, what budget gap we're creating specifically. To have that number nailed down would be really helpful. So thank you very much for clarifying that.
Yep, I mean, I think, so just to clarify the question, Jane, before you sit down, is that the model that we voted as a committee, the step-down model that you want to know, or is it the, if we sustain at 3,600, you want to know?
I think the question is sustainability. So your budget is balanced for FY23 only. You're reducing the tuition to 3,600. My question is, can you on your own sustain that? And by on your own, I mean, can the school budget in FY24 sustain that cut, or do you need more money from a different source? And if you do need more money from a different source, how much? That's what I'm asking.
Okay.
Thank
So,
you.
I mean, we are scheduled to meet with you on March 2nd at this point in time, so we can pull a little bit more information together in preparation for that, and as we work through other potential models and whatnot. And if there's a February or March financial forum that we can work through as well together, we can even work even more on it with Select Board and the town manager as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further questions, points of comment from the committee or anybody else? Okay, let's try that motion again.
We're going to gloss it up a little bit this time as well.
Okay.
I move to approve the superintendent's FY23 recommended budget of $51,783,363.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Carla. Any further discussion? All in favor? All opposed? And it passes 6-0. Hopefully the computer didn't crash this time. I want to say thank you for asking the questions too, because we didn't mean to cause confusion on your part either. So thank you for asking the clarifying, and we'll continue to work with you as we work through the problem. Okay, the last and final topic, before I do that, it won't take us long, but before I do that, do you want to adjourn? Finance Committee?
I move to adjourn.
All in favor?
Out of enthusiasm.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Goodbye, thank you.
Okay, so the last and final topic on the agenda is the FY23 calendar review that has been provided. Will one of you be able to adjust it, or is Dr. M, are you on the call? No. Okay, so
We can take notes with any.
you can take notes. Before, I guess, any final feedback, any other updates that anybody has from the committee perspective? I think most everything we asked for has been incorporated already. Aaron?
Just in terms of feedback, so I appreciate all the edits that were made based on our feedback, but I do find this harder to read than the color-coded that we have had the last several years. I appreciate that the symbols are defined at the bottom, but I still just, I'm someone, I look at a lot on my phone, right? And this was like so hard to read on my phone, so I had to pull it up on a computer. I don't think I'm alone in, wanting to pull things up on a smaller device from time to time. So I like that we're trying to go for school spirit with red and colors, but my feedback would be to go back to a color-coded system.
Any other feedback? Sean?
I think maybe the one major piece of feedback we offered that wasn't able to be addressed was the no school November thing. And I know there are just too many, sort of waterfalling, moving parts, right? So maybe we just throw it out there for future years as there's more time to consider the other impacts on the calendar that we think about, ways to continue to address that. But otherwise, certainly appreciate all the edits since the last round.
We do have 1 week, well, one almost full week in November, but if you count October, we actually have one full week of time there that we'll actually be in class, so that's good. It's progress. And I think the biggest question is really kind of fall back to, student-teacher conversation, or parent-teacher conversations, right? On the 18th. That's the one that we have some leverage on. Otherwise, it's holidays and elections. So, okay. Anything else? No. Aaron?
Just another comment that's not reflected here, but we were told, I'm really pleased that the kindergarten orientations were moved so that kindergarten students can have the same first day as their peers and siblings. So thank you for that.
I'll also note, because it was asked of me over the summer, if we purposefully moved release days, it looks like we've changed the times for middle school and high school release days. It was 1 and 2, and now it's 12:30 and 1. I think that's purposeful to help with some professional development coordination and a few other things as well. So actively looking for ways to continue the growth of the district, and I think our students will actually appreciate being released a little bit earlier as well. But we know we hit time on learning. We have no concerns about that, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Great. All right. So motion.
I move to approve the 2022-2023 district calendar.
Second.
Seconded by Chuck. Any further discussion? Yes, Jeff.
Ridge Road. I was just looking at the major religious and cultural holidays, and for the Jewish holidays, it says October 4-5 with a star begins the night before at sunset. Does that mean it starts the 3rd at sunset, or?
Starts the 4th at sunset.
So, I mean, it seems a little funny to list the 4th and the 5th and then say it starts the night before. Maybe I'm the only one finding that a little odd.
It's always fun to try and figure out the best way to denote some of those, but we'll take that under advisement, I think. Okay. We have a motion. Any further conversation from the committee? Anybody else? All right, all in favor? All opposed? And it passes 6-0. Okay. That's it from an agenda perspective. I guess one real quick note from a logistics perspective, so the committee knows. Earlier this year, we had meetings on both the 3rd of February and the 17th of February on our calendar. As of right now, we only have a meeting on the 17th of February on our calendar. As we looked at it, there just wasn't enough at the time to force another meeting after 4 meetings in a row. So I wanted to give the committee some time, off between meetings. It's possible that 17th meeting might move to the 10th. We'll talk about it in case if there's any conflicts that causes a problem with that. We can work through that, but just be aware that there's some potential flexibility and move in that space as we think about some of the upcoming requests that are going on throughout the community and whatnot. Mr. Robinson, yes.
So I didn't get a chance to look at our calendar. So we've been getting these emails and stuff on the mask. Is that coming up on that policy coming up on an agenda soon?
That is currently scheduled for the 17th.
Okay.
And that is one of the reasons why we might move the meeting up.
Okay.
Is that particular conversation. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. With that said, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second? Second. Seconded by Sean. All right, all in favor? All opposed? None, and we are adjourned. And we did hit under an hour if somebody...